Healthy people have a need for
Hookers for Jesus, prostitute, stripper, what have you. I went to Sunday school. I had a lot of issues going on. MTV, in pop culture, I was living the life. I had a pimp, and I OD'd on cocaine. I had a blast. It was really fun. I can't even count. And now I reach out to prostitutes.
Hairy, horny in my imagination, writhing on the floor all over the world. My mom and dad manifested horny, freaky, scary, the psychosis, the pathological fear.
People canceled history very good. God, he wants automatons, he wants
bang, bang. Totally. How come we have these ideas that are so mythical, that are so primitive? Why don't you...
I have to dance, drink beer, him or her or it, and Hitler, who also believed in Jesus and thought he was doing God's will.
I went to Sunday school.
Well, I finally figured it out. I'm shit at talking to Christians. It's not that I can't get around in society. I do work, of course. It's just that lately I keep getting contacted by Christians who want something from me. To let me know I'm a liar, to tell me how terrible it is that I'm criticizing their religion, and that I should stop, to spam me with some stupid 10 questions. We ask atheists and tell them that if they answer, we'll respect them, but really we'll just tell them that their answers are wrong anyway, and eventually say that it all comes down to faith, you know, that kind of thing. One man basically implied that I don't have a right to have my website up, which one I'm not quite sure, as I know he hasn't listened to any of these podcasts, unless I give my alternatives to biblical law. You know, there's biblical law and then there's other, because there's always only two answers to any questions, if it can be called a question. So today, this week, I will answer one particular set of 10 magical questions. There are several sets to be found on the internet that will either convert the Christian or convert me, because, you know, there's only two outcomes to anything. The questions I'm attempting to answer come from lifeway.com, just so you know.
Question 1. Creation. The overwhelming consensus of science is that the entire cosmos, including space and time, came into existence at a finite point in the past. All of our observations, equations, and physical laws testify to a point of origin for this universe. In light of the troubling evidence for a beginning, and that we may not even be able to find a natural cause in principle, what explanation is given to the questions, why is there something rather than nothing, and where did it all come from?
The reason there is something rather than nothing is because nothing does not and has never existed. Nothing, by definition, cannot exist because nothing is non-existent. I don't know how much clearer I can get here. You cannot describe a nothingness because there is no such thing. No thing. I cannot go on, however, without mentioning that the premise here is absolutely wrong. As far as I understand it, everything did not come into existence at a finite point in the past. The idea is that everything always existed, just as Christians like to say God always existed, but as a dense singularity of energy matter. It could not have been nothing because nothing never existed. Of course, it had to be there, since you can't have anything coming into existence from nothing, as if a god snapped his fingers and made the universe out of nothing. It's a typical misunderstanding. I don't pretend to know a lot about it, but it seems to be one of the best explanations we have right now, along with other ideas that are very intriguing, like string theory, multiverses, and such. The theories that are made from observable evidence are a lot more juicy and intriguing than ancient mythologies, which are interesting, but, you know, mythologies such as the talking snake, the dragon and the princess, the mountain fucking muskrat, and many others. The Jewish idea takes no more precedence than any other ancient or even recent mythology, since it does not follow any observable evidence. The Hubble telescope never showed us any giant sandals, Xenus, or faraway giant eggshells.
Elle est très chouette, et sa cousine, elle est divine. Mais son cousin, il est malsain. Je dirais même que c'est un bon à rien. Noémie est très jolie, moins que Zoé, mais plus que Nathalie. Anatole, il est frivole. Monsieur Gaston s'occupe du téléphone. Gaston, y a le téléphone qui sonne et y a jamais personne qui y répond. Gaston, y a le téléphone qui sonne et y a jamais personne qui y répond. Marie-Louise est exquise. Marie-Thérèse, elle est obèse. Marie-Berthe, elle est experte par l'entremise de sa tante Artémise. Édouard fume le cigare et Léonard porte une barbe noire. Léontine fait la cuisine. Monsieur Gaston s'occupe du téléphone. Gaston, y a le téléphone qui sonne et y a jamais personne qui y répond. Gaston, y a le téléphone qui sonne et y a jamais personne qui y répond. Gaston, 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 y a le téléphone qui sonne et y a jamais personne qui y répond. Gaston, 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 y a le téléphone qui sonne, y a jamais personne qui y répond. Non, 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 Gaston, téléphone qui sonne. Peut-être bien que c'est important.
Question 2. Order. The past several decades have added profoundly to our knowledge of chemistry, physics, and cosmology. It has become increasingly clear that we live in a universe finely tuned for the support of complex life. This fact is so universally acknowledged that even secular scientists have coined the term anthropic principle to describe it. How is it that we live in such an exquisitely fine-tuned universe? Even assuming that the universe could have popped out of nothingness, why should it have been such an orderly and hospitable one? Is there a scientific testable answer for this question that does not simply appeal to the imagination?
Again, we're looking here at a false premise. It is completely false, and I tend to think dishonest, to assert that it is clear that the universe is finely tuned for supportive life. I don't know who these secular scientists are. They could be mathematicians, statisticians, even economists, but I highly doubt they were physicists, astronomers, or even biologists. Without turning to the net for support, I don't think the universe is fine-tuned for life at all. As far as we know, of course, there's only one planet in this one little solar system that can sustain complex life, and one that may have millions of years ago sustained life. We don't know. Most of what's out there, though, is space. It's possible there's more life out there, but near us, it's probably just us. How's that for fine-tuned and life-sustaining? Hell, why is it that all of that vastness, not even mentioned in Jewish or Christian scripture. At least Chinese and Hindu scriptures manage to refer to what's out there as more than just lights hanging in the sky that might crash land into a lake and poison it. The fine-tuning argument, of which the anthropic principle is actually an argument against, is basically that since we live here and the earth sustains us, the universe and the earth must have been created just for us by some old white guy. But since there has to be something, since nothing cannot exist, there doesn't need to be an ultimate answer for its existence. The something is necessary by the questioner's own definition. The Christian assumes in his worldview that all scientific questions must be answerable by invoking his favorite God, fine-tuning his own universe, as it were. By the way, remember the banana argument? The one that Ray Comfort conceded to Wah? You know, when he said, "You can have the banana." You know, fine-tunings like that. He said that the banana was made by God to fit the human hand. Funny, because the banana that was made by nature, or God if you must, was small and round and had seeds and was pretty unpleasant. Turns out that it was people who hybridized the banana we have today, that tasty little thing.
J'avais dessiné sur le sable son doux visage qui me souriait. Puis il a plu sur cette plage, dans cet orage, elle a disparu. Et j'ai crié, crié, Aline, pour qu'elle revienne. Et j'ai pleuré, pleuré, oh j'avais trop de peine. Je me suis assis auprès de son âme, mais la belle dame s'était enfuie. Je l'ai cherchée sans plus y croire et sans un espoir pour me guider. Et j'ai crié, crié, Aline, pour qu'elle revienne. Et j'ai pleuré, pleuré, oh j'avais trop de peine. Je n'ai gardé que ce doux visage, comme une épave sur le sable mouillé. Et j'ai crié, crié, Aline, pour qu'elle revienne. Et j'ai pleuré, pleuré, oh j'avais trop de peine. Et j'ai crié, crié, Aline, pour qu'elle revienne. Et j'ai pleuré, pleuré, oh j'avais trop de peine. Et j'ai crié, crié.
Question 3. Abiogenesis. The problem of abiogenesis, the origin of the first life form, is one of the thorniest and most intractable issues in chemistry. Our increasing knowledge of microbiology and Earth history has only added to the complexity of what needs to be explained. The simplest life is equivalent to modern bacteria, which is loaded with complex activity, information, and molecular machines. The fossil record does not give evidence that there was a prebiotic soup, or that there were any biological precursors to the first organisms, or that the atmosphere was the ideal mix to yield the necessary molecules, or that there was the expected long period of time between when the Earth could support life and when it actually appeared. Evolutionists regularly segregate the abiogenesis problem from the issue of evolution because 1. It is a challenge they would rather not be saddled with, or 2. It is the most logical point for possible divine intervention. However, for the atheist, there is no escaping this issue. They are obligated to seek out some purely natural explanation. What hope for an explanation do you have? Are you satisfied to have problems like this that are unanswered or even unanswerable? In telling the tale of life on Earth, science writers often unconsciously use the word miracle for the appearance of the first organisms. What kind of evidence is needed before we are to actually accept that something like this really is a miracle?
I don't know that abiogenesis or cell replication and origin is a thorny issue. I think scientists see it as a fascinating issue. It's no thorn in anyone's side. Creationists want to include abiogenesis in species diversity because their whole problem is with abiogenesis and not with species diversity. I mean, look around you. But when life gets really tiny, like with virus mutation, they confuse that obvious evolutionary process with abiogenesis. I can see why a religious person would get frustrated when a science type says this to them. It's like Ricky Gervais trying to reason with Carl Pilkington. The minds are just different. Creationists work with categories and kinds, and science types deal with facts and details. Creationists can't define a kind because to them a kind is just a kind. There are hundreds of theories of life origin, but the fact is, since the 50s, we've been improving on the Miller-Urey experiment, if I might read from Encarta. In the 1950s, Miller and Urey had combined methane, ammonia, water vapor, and hydrogen, the probable components of Earth's early atmosphere, in a flask. They introduced electrical sparks into the mixture to simulate lightning. When they analyzed the contents of the flask, they found that the chemicals had combined to form amino acids and hydroxy acids, the building blocks of the proteins in living things. Carl Sagan followed a similar method, but refined the primordial soup mixture to include methane, ammonia, water, and hydrogen sulfide. He also exposed the mixture to ultraviolet light to simulate the effect of sunlight on the chemicals. His mixture produced amino acids as well as several kinds of sugars and nucleic acids. Nucleic acids are fundamental substances of life, responsible for passing on genetic characteristics and triggering the formation of specific proteins. The work of Urey, Miller, and Sagan showed that the chemicals present on the early Earth could combine under the right conditions to form the building blocks of life, end quote. So we know it can happen without adding, and then a miracle occurred in the equation. Why the word miracle? I tend to think quote mining here, but he didn't add a name to the quote, so I could just as well say made up. But if a scientist, or more likely a stupid school textbook, said miracle, it's because someone, unlike the writer of these questions, sees beauty in the processes of chemistry. It's there, but some can't see it because their brains won't let them. Some look at a nude and see pornography. Some see love and mastery. Some see porno and a great masterpiece. Because it's all there. Terrible and wonderful.
Good evening and welcome to a face-off. Our question tonight is a very provocative one. Does Nightline exist? According to one recent poll, 70% of Americans believe yes, Nightline does exist. But who or what is Nightline? Some sort of formless, malevolent force in the universe. How do we explain Nightline? This is a discussion that opens up a whole... It is entirely possible that there are people here on this stage with me tonight who believe that others on the stage are doing if only unwittingly, the work of Nightline. It is also possible that there are people on this stage who believe that believing in Nightline is dangerous, wrong, and destructive.
Very good, as so good.
You have up and down religious institutions, neurosis, and sometimes even psychosis. We can have forbidden lust. All the trouble in the world today is between religious ideologies.
Ce soir c'est le déluge, le dernier, le plus beau. C'est la vraie fin du monde, on a fait un bateau. On a pris des vermines un peu malgré nous. Il ne sauve rien, celui qui ne sauve pas tout. Noé, Noé, Noé. On a pris des lentilles, on a pris des bijoux. On aimait ce qui brille la nuit et qui rend fou. On a pris l'éléphant et ses deux dernières dents. Dernier éléphant, premier million de cure-dents. Oh, Noé, 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 pourquoi t'es pas sur le bateau? Noé, Noé, pourquoi t'as troué la voile et le drapeau? On a pris les castors, on a pris les oiseaux et toutes les fourrures pour nous faire des manteaux. On s'est dit les poissons, ils resteront dans l'eau. Comment mettre une baleine tout au fond d'un bateau? Noé, Noé, Noé. On a pris des gazelles et même des manchots, un couple d'hirondelles, des putois, des blaireaux. Comme il faisait froid tout au fond du bateau, on a pris des menteurs pour dire qu'il fait chaud. Sur le bateau, Noé, Noé, pourquoi t'as troué la voile et le drapeau? Oh, oh, oh. Noé, Noé, oh, oh, oh. Comme on avait compris qu'on n'aurait pas de journaux, on a pris des mannequins pas trop maigres et très beaux, des tonnes de maquillage, de dentelles, de maillots, pour faire face à la plage quand il referait beau. Noé, Noé, Noé. On a pris des punaises pour les posters de Dieu, ces rêves de camionneurs qui nous passent le cœur. Ce soir c'est le déluge, le dernier, le plus beau, c'est la vraie fin du monde, on a fait un bateau. Sur le bateau, Noé, Noé, pourquoi t'as troué la voile et le drapeau? Oh, oh, oh. Noé, Noé.
Question 4. Transcendent principles. Logic and mathematics are abstract principles that have been discovered rather than invented. We cannot do science, communicate, or navigate this world without them. They appear to stand outside of nature to describe and measure it. As Albert Einstein said, the most incomprehensible thing about the world is that it is comprehensible. What is the source of math and logic? The existence of this remarkably fine-tuned universe aside, how is it that we have these languages of reality to so elegantly describe and interact with it?
So, am I to assume that this is supposed to make me stop and think that God made 3 rabbit skins plus 4 rabbit skins into 7 rabbit skins? Really? And stop with the elegant, fine-tuned crap and go live on the bottom of the ocean or at the South Pole or something. The only reason one might think that logic stands outside of nature is one's own psychology. But there's no reason nature cannot describe and measure nature. That's what a cubit is for. Or was Noah's Ark supposed to be measured by God's forearm? Hello? This is what I'm talking about. Toes, arms, rocks, sticks. One look like another. One helped to measure the other to make stuff with. Human cognizance is the source of math and logic. It was there. It took a human to name it. Still an atheist.
Mêlant la drogue et le vin, un moment le bateau vogue. Mêlant le vin à la drogue, le printemps revient. Revient quand le bateau vogue. Mêlant le vin à la drogue, le bateau coule et s'éteint. En mêlant drogue et vin.
Basta con papá, los muchachos no les gusta a contar ahora, porque tiene que dormir muchos. Eso es como ça, eso es la vida.
Vacilón, qué rico vacilón. Cha cha cha, qué rico cha cha cha. Vacilón, qué rico vacilón. Cha cha cha, qué rico cha cha cha.
En mêlant la drogue et le vin, un moment le bateau vogue. Mêlant le vin à la drogue, le printemps revient. Revient quand le bateau vogue. Mêlant le vin à la drogue, le bateau coule et s'éteint. En mêlant drogue et vin. Le printemps revient, le bateau vogue. En mêlant le vin à la drogue.
Vacilón, qué rico vacilón.
Tais-toi,
Cha cha cha, qué rico cha cha cha.
laisse-moi,
Vacilón, qué rico vacilón.
fatigué.
Cha cha cha, qué rico cha cha cha.
Tais-toi. En mêlant la drogue et le vin, un moment le bateau vogue. Mêlant le vin à la drogue, le printemps revient et vogue. Revient quand le bateau vogue. Mêlant le vin à la drogue, le bateau coule et s'éteint.
Mira comme c'est bella, el cha cha cha.
Question 5. Morality. Another transcendent entity that is a problem for atheists is morality. With no divine author or judge, there's no reason to think that there should be any moral laws that we are obliged to recognize and keep, except for self-serving reasons. And yet morality aligns with our deepest intuitions. We expect others to recognize it. We urge our kids to exercise it. Therapists get rich repairing the effects of its abuse. We judge criminals insane if they do not recognize it. And all cultures affirm it in common principle, if not in individual application. Do you deny objective morality? That the difference between Mother Teresa and Hitler is not just a matter of preference, like chocolate versus vanilla ice cream? If not, then how do you ground morality? How do you explain where it came from and why we ought to be moral tomorrow? Skeptics often bring up the, quote, problem of evil as evidence against God, i.e., if there is a good and all-powerful God, and why is there evil in this world? Do you think that this is a valid objection? If so, are you admitting that there is evil in the world? What is evil? And do you not admit its opposite, good? The problem with evil objection only makes sense if such things as good and evil are objectively real, not just preference statements.
Whew. So, the author says that with no divine author or judge, there's no reason to think that there should be any moral laws that we are obliged to recognize and keep, except for self-serving reasons. There you have it. The fact that we do things because we value what we do and what we do it for is no reason to throw up one's hands and start looting liquor stores. If we did not want anything for ourselves, we would not do it. The problem people have with this is that they've not given any thought to the nature of selfishness. To say that everyone is selfish is not to say that the world is evil, everyone for himself in that kind of naive sense. It's to say that our selfishness is the source of our doing good in this world. To do no good in the world in which one lives cannot serve the self. The selfishness I speak of is the shared value of individuals to live, to have freedom to pursue values, to be accepted. Of course, we all do not want the exact same things, and this is where the golden rule breaks down. It seems to me to be a more moral assessment to deny the golden rule and to accept values that are different from ours. This is another example of the difference in thinking between atheists and Christians. Christians say that there must be an ultimate judge to lay down the laws. I say that the morality is already there, and that humans naturally want certain things and must behave in certain ways in order to achieve these values and virtues. And to put it another way, I'm an atheist. Of course, I think individuals wrote down some dumbass laws to control each other and cause cultural wars between each other by setting each other apart by religions, wearing special uniforms and cutting parts off their genitals. This ultimate judge made these 10 alternative commandments because Moses went and broke the others. Ultimate perfect laws like don't draw stuff and don't work on a certain day. You know, very important things like that. But, of course, Judge Ultima forgot to mention that owning a human being is wrong. But why is it wrong, Allie? If you don't have an ultimate judge, how do you know it's wrong to own another human being? I'd have to say somehow you've figured it out too, even though it's not in any biblical laws that, frankly, not very many of you bother to follow anyway, and I'm not talking about cussing or killing, but even that's debatable. Why is freedom important? Well, what would happen to you if you were a slave? Would you be able to do the things that are important to you? Would you be able to see the people you care about and do things for them? If you lived in a community and your community allowed this, could it happen to you and maybe to the people you value? Do you wish to see the people you love imprisoned? Are you able to imagine how it would feel to not be able to pursue your values and virtues? Do you wish to be beaten and raped by anyone who wanted to hurt you? What about your loved ones? No? So you don't think slavery and rape is a good thing to do? Well, what if you just did it yourself? Or do you think people might try and stop you or even kill you for trying to take away what they love? Now do you get it? I have to point out the false dichotomies in the question. Good versus evil. Mother Teresa versus Hitler. I am not the only person in the world who does not have a dualistic worldview. Religions many thousands of years older than Judaism never conceived of dualism. Yin and yang are not really opposites. No one is completely good or completely evil. And Mother Teresa, I have to point out, was in no way pure good. She had a pretty dark side and participated in some nasty evil herself, hung out with some pretty Hitler-like people. Just ask Penn Jillette, but of course that discussion is for another time. Finally, Christian morality is subjective, not objective. If all morality is subject to the whim of a being outside of nature who changes his mind, you've got your wishy-washy morality right there. If there is no human evaluation of actions, just blind obedience, you've got no morality.
Cup your hands under your breasts and hold them for 10 seconds.
Question 6. Meaning. In the atheist worldview...
Hold it. There is no atheist worldview. Continue.
We are but products of time, chance, and blind forces. There is no objective meaning and value to our human existence. Yet our deepest longing is for our lives to count for something. We intuitively know that humans have rights and dignity. Does life really have no point other than what you pretend for your own sake? Will you say, like atheist philosopher Albert Camus, that the only serious question is suicide? What values and purpose will you instill? Will you be honest with them, or will you borrow ideas from some non-atheistic belief system so as not to disappoint?
Atheism is not a worldview, so I have the right to my values however I get them. More typical thinking from a tribalist standpoint, of course. If one has values, one must be following some kind of organized system to get them, right? Bullshit. My worldview, hopefully evolving, says I must be responsible for the rationality of my values, and I alone am responsible for evaluating them as I am the one performing the action. I don't subjugate my values to a hive. I don't know that, quote, our deepest longing is for my life to count for something. That's someone else's claim. Actually, it's a very egotistical claim, in fact, very selfish. All part of a dualistic reward/threat system. Isn't it enough to simply live, to simply be, and artistically speaking, be given this gift of such a tiny chance to even be alive? Isn't the entire universe enough for you? Or are you so special as to deserve all of eternity? Your special little personality loved by the most important thing in eternity. What a special snowflake you are. For me, I just feel lucky. As far as my children go, it has to be for the sake of argument, because I don't think that I'm so special that my lily white little genes must go on to grant the world the gift of my crotch fruit. But if I did, no, I wouldn't go running off to church, because I'm not a coward. Hopefully, I'm not a coward. Hopefully, I would value my children enough to realize they're whole, entire, real individuals who exist entirely apart from myself and would deserve my respect and honesty. Why the hell would I want to abuse an impressionable innocent with the violent psychosexual pornography that is the Bible's guide to child beating? So far, all I read in the Bible about children is to stone them, to beat them, to sell them into sexual slavery, and of course, as Deuteronomy shows us, to eat them. No, my crazy, crazy friends, I wouldn't go all Bible shit on them.
Là-bas, derrière la colline, là-bas, où le soleil décline, j'ai entendu qu'il y a des garçons et puis des filles qui chantent des chansons pop, qui tournent en l'air, des chansons pop, musique populaire, Venez amis, derrière la colline, là-bas, où le soleil décline, nous serons 100 ou peut-être 100 000 qui chanteront le nouvel évangile, des chansons pop qui tournent en l'air, des chansons pop, musique populaire, là-bas, derrière la colline, dans un grand champ où le soleil décline, nous pourrons dire et chanter tous en chœur, tous réunis ce qu'on a dans le cœur. Là-bas, derrière la colline, là-bas, où le soleil décline, venez chanter les chants de la sagesse, venez chanter les chants de la jeunesse, des chansons pop qui tournent dans l'air, des chansons pop, musique populaire, des chansons pop qui tournent dans l'air, des chansons pop, musique populaire, musique populaire.
Question 7. The mind. In the world of atheism,
Hubba-wah?
Where there is no soul or transcendent self, humans are simply biological machines, and our minds are just computers made out of meat. With this in view, there is really no room for something like free will, since we are all just operating according to our programming and our environmental influences. And there are great difficulties in conceding that chemistry can produce something as abstract as consciousness, or at least anything qualitatively different from what we ourselves might ultimately produce using computer technology. Are you prepared to accept the idea that no one is really morally responsible for their bad behavior? And conversely, that virtuous behavior is not commendable? In what way will you seek to convince me that I am really not a conscious and self-aware being, that it is just a complex biochemical illusion? Can you accept that computer programs may one day be just as much persons as you yourself?
Wow, what an interesting assertion. And what a horrible denigration of biological processes. What's so bad about metabolism and neurofiring? I think it's pretty neat. The fact is, I'm not a transcendent self, and I'm pretty okay with that. It's really always the Christian who qualifies our chemistry and process with the word just, not me. He's the one denigrating human life. Human life is so low. It's the type of despair Carl Sagan and Richard Dawkins wrote about in Demon Haunted World and Unweaving the Rainbow, respectively. So many people miss the beauty and simplicity. I'm glad I don't see the world that way. If there's no sparkles on it, it's not pretty. Of course, it's absurd that no one is really morally responsible for their behavior. This writer got it backwards again. It's the Christian who isn't ultimately responsible for his behavior because Jesus died for his sins. He said an incantation, so everything bad he did is washed away. Of course, here he betrays his hatred for the world. He doesn't value nature at all because it's only after death does anything have meaning. He's the nihilist here. If you accept your responsibility for your life, you value your life. Life has meaning for you. For the writer, it seems only death has meaning. As for the computer thing is made, and I'm assuming we mean a self-aware consciousness because we might already have basic consciousnesses already in manufactured things. I'm certainly not going to be one to pick up a pitchfork against it. If it's conscious, self-aware, it's an individual, so I can't kill it. It's funny because it's always the atheists and the artists who bring up the ramification of scientific discoveries. Atheists and artists like Asimov, and of course, more importantly, Mary Shelley, whose Frankenstein never ceases to be relevant. The only Christian zombie of literature was Jesus, and all they could do was fall down and worship him like 1930s adventure movie savages. I don't know if Mary Shelley was an atheist like her husband, but there sure was blasphemy in that book.
We open today's program of religious music with the inspiring hymn, "The Lord Shall Lead His Flock of Sheep," as sung by the Moron Tabernacle Choir.
Question 8. Supernatural experiences. Every known time and culture is rich with stories of near-death experiences, ghosts, angels, demons, prophetic dreams and visions, and miraculous healings. While some of these are certainly spurious or not well documented, others have reasonable experimental support. In addition to this, humans seem to be incurably religious. The idea of God and the spiritual is deeply entrenched in the human psyche, if not in its actual experience. What are we to make of all this? If man is simply an adapted biological organism, then how is it that we did not manage to adapt to our natural environment in this area? Why are we not naturalists rather than theists? Can any of this be a hint toward reality? Or must we think that the bulk of humanity flirts with insanity?
I don't think that there are any claims of the supernatural that have reasonable experimental support. If they had, we'd have all heard of them, and they'd have the James Randi Prize. So, lots of people are religious. I don't know why being a naturalist would be a necessary result of evolution. Even some lower animals like birds have superstition. Religious and supernatural belief is a natural result of not knowing stuff. Superstition is somewhat like a primitive, animal-like scientific method. Why are most books about magical creatures books for children? I think it's because it's fun to think about, fun and scary. It takes practice to be able to use critical thinking and to coordinate all of your senses to make sense of things. Otherwise, how would we know what a mirage is? But we do. I don't know that humans are incurably religious anyway. I'm not religious anymore. Most people in Sweden, Iceland, and Quebec aren't religious. The numbers of people who call themselves religious are shrinking. Incurable? Hardly. Is the rest of humanity insane? I guess that depends upon your definition of normal. If by normal you mean people who think that spooks control what they do, then I guess most people are normal.
Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you candy. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you apple, a plum, and an apricot or two. Ah! Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you figs and dates and grapes and cakes. Ah! Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you candy. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you everything. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you Christmas tree. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you marriage ring and a pomegranate too. Ah! Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you roots and hair and a love of your hair. Ah! Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, come on. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you Easter egg. Come on to my house, I'm gonna give you everything.
Number 9, Case for Christ. The case for the Jesus of Scripture is extremely compelling. There is good evidence that the New Testament was written in the generation of the apostles. We have thousands of copies of these documents in their source language, some of which go back of 100 years after Jesus' death. There's no evidence of significant corruption in the known manuscripts. There's no motivation and evidence for fraud amongst the apostles and church fathers. Most died martyrs' deaths. The trend of archaeology is toward validation, not denial, of what it is possible to confirm in Scripture. Even non-biblical manuscripts support various key details of Christian theology. The burden of proof is generally on the one seeking to deny historical records. What alternative explanation do you offer in New Testament documentation in the tradition of the Church, and what support do you have for your theory? Is it because of the miracles that you doubt the Scriptures? If Jesus really were God in the flesh, how would you expect him to confirm that fact?
Well, I reject those claims. I'm no expert on it, but from what I've read, the Gospels were written almost a century after Jesus' supposed death. The ex-biblical stories were shown to be frauds. There's no archaeological validation that I know of, apart from some articles in some religious magazines. But whether or not a man named Jesus actually existed is not really important, is it? We would have no idea who the man was without the miracles, since we don't have anything of substance besides the New Testament. The miracles, of course, do make me doubt those scriptures, as I would doubt any tale. Is it the miracles that make you doubt Greek mythology? The Gospels just isn't the only game in town. I have no reason to believe in a half-man, half-god who rose from the dead and hypnotized people with a soothing politic. So the scriptures are true, and I have to prove that they aren't? My alternative explanation is that the Gospels were written by evangelists. You can tell by the widely different ways the Gospels tell the stories that these people are trying to sell something. They write a poem about a belief with someone else's book open on the table beside them. How would you explain Harry Potter? She writes about magic that's so similar to so many other stories. If the Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Dracula, and Gilgamesh were tied together somehow in one binding by some committee in 2100 something, would that be a miracle too? Hey, there's no contradiction. What's your alternative explanation?
Believe in the theory of evolution? Man evolved from ape?
Yeah, because of biological evidence, I believe that. The planet Earth evolved from heavy particles and matter coming together, and then slowly as it cooled off, single-cell life forms developed in the ocean, and then slowly they evolved into multi-celled organisms, and then eventually into humans. Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Could have been a hermaphrodite. Yeah, probably. I don't know. Could have been.
And this is the
fake Darwin. Gotta find a female. Gotta have female. Evolve. Evolution is, I don't believe in God anymore. Evolution is a fact. I believe in gay marriage. I love you. Evolution's a proven fact. Honey, I'm not coming to church with you anymore. In the beginning, there was nothing. We're just animals. You can get into pornography. Seriously. Christians, they're not intelligent. Say hey. Well me.
If the control room can there, okay, this is tape coming into us raw, and the president is waiting for the cue in the Oval Office after a long day. Here now, the president of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, the president of the United States.
Shit. Buy your own damn fries. And what that means is you've got this gaping hole in the economy. That's why the shit's getting way too complicated for me. That's why the shit's getting way too complicated for me. Shit. This gaping fucking hole in the economy. That when you have that situation, buy your own damn fries. Fucking Eskimo. Buy your own damn fries. Fucking Eskimo. Recognize that even if philosophically you're wary of fucking government, when you have bullshit parties, they start loss of confidence. Those are deficits that could turn a crisis into a motherfucking catastrophe. That wasn't just some random number that I plucked out of a hat. Ignorant motherfuckers. This gaping motherfucking hole in the economy. This gaping motherfucking hole in the economy.
Maybe I have done a few bad things, but that's the way the world is today. Sometimes you have to do a few little wrong things or to do one big right thing. And that's what I'm trying to do for you and for our people, that one big right thing.
Because no one knows what happened to that first $350 billion of your money.
Second pass, no luck. We're going to keep at this until we can hear what the president had to say.
And in fact, there are several sorry-ass motherfuckers who suggested that FDR was wrong to intervene back in the New Deal. They're fighting battles that I thought were resolved a pretty long time ago. You know that guy ain't shit. Some of the criticisms got nothing on me, right? Nothing. Shit. Shit. Recognize that even if philosophically you're wary of fucking government, you ain't my bitch, nigga. You ain't my bitch, nigga. And in fact, the shit's getting way too complicated for me. That still means that you're gonna have to buy your own damn fries.
Question 10. Rational faith. Christians are often accused of being simple-minded, superstitious, or irrational. Is it so unreasonable for us to believe that the universe had a beginning because it actually was created? The laws of physics are so fine-tuned because it had a designer? People are preoccupied with good and evil because they are real things? That we long for purpose and meaning because they exist to be had? That life from non-life really is miraculous? That consciousness and free will seem real because they are? That people are incurably religious because there is actually something real in religion? And the historical case for Jesus is so tenacious because it is actually true? If there really is no meaning or purpose to life, no objective good or evil, and the existence of truth itself is open to debate, by what standard will you condemn the beliefs of Christians?
I do condemn some beliefs by the standard of common decency. I condemn other beliefs by the standard of observable evidence and inductive reasoning. Just to make it clear, I answer that I judge and that I have every right to make my assertions. My standard is the universe and the laws of nature, what actually exists. I need no middleman. I need no God. I get the feeling that the writer is speaking to an imaginary audience that he made up out of burlap and straw, a congregation of atheist scarecrows in a church made of straw. Have fun blowing on it! And I'm still an atheist, so I will see you all next week.
Question 7. The mind. In the world of atheism, there is no soul.